Hey everybody, welcome back. Alright, so in this lesson we are going to look at making a lead layer. So at the moment we got this sort of what sounds like really a trancey kind of basic lead. And we want, for this track, we want it so it's got more of an 80s vibe. So this layer that we just made is going to sort of be like the foundation for the sound because it's got a nice thick sort of wide fullness going on. I'm just turning it down a bit there. But we want to overlay this with another layer, and that's going to have this more sort of slight 80s kind of vibe to it. So let's do that. Now I'm just going to duplicate Retrolog just because it's easy. And let's just name these. So let's call this Ret Lead Layer 01. Hold Shift and Enter. And then let's just copy that name. Control C or Command C and Control V. And let's just change that to 2. Hold Shift and hit Enter. And then what we're going to do, actually, I'm just going to reload Retrolog. So it starts from the init preset. So I'm just going to reload Retrolog. There we go. Now we're back to the basic preset. And of course it gives us these weird sine waves now instead of being set to a saw wave. Very peculiar choice from Steinberg there, but hey, what the hell? It's not going to ruin our lives. So we want to get an 80s kind of vibe out of this. So we're going to use actually just one oscillator, I think, and we will have it on saw wave and on single. So we're starting off from a good place. Now the first thing I want to do is turn glide on. And we'll have it on about 92 milliseconds, just a tiny bit above number 2 on the glide time there. And you can hear, obviously, it just, whenever it reaches a new note, it glides from the pitch of the last note down to the new pitch of the new note. So it gives that kind of slight pitch bendy kind of flavour to it. But obviously, we don't just want a simple sort of weird saw wave sound like that. I mean, it sounds way too basic. Let's just turn this up a bit as well. And also, let's just turn, for now, this whole thing up an octave. Might need to turn that down again, but let's just see how it goes. So don't want this quite as bright as it is, so just using the filter there to just cap the high frequencies, or just tame the high frequencies, as this is going to sort of have the same properties as the last synth. We don't want any sort of strange dynamics going on, so just a sustain fully open on each, and the release, that should be fine. We can leave it like it is. What I do want to do though is start messing around with the modulation of this. So what I want to do is add a sort of wobbliness to the pitch. So let's use LFO 3. Now we haven't looked at modulation before, and we didn't look at it in the beginner's tutorial, so I'll spend a bit more time explaining this. So down here we've got what's called the modulation matrix. It's got 4 pages to it. We'll just use page 1, that's fine. And all you do is you select the source of your modulation. So I'm going to choose LFO, which is a low frequency oscillator. And all it does is kind of give you a sine wave, which basically goes up and down. And you can choose the speed of that as well. And you can use it to modulate other properties. And that's what the destination is. So let's just select LFO 3 as our source. And then our destination we're going to put as the pitch. Now at the moment, you won't notice anything because we've got no amounts dialed in here. So let's just do this, and I'll make it a bit extreme to start off with. Now you can hear that that's just way too much. It sounds awful. So we want to dial in a very small amount of this. So I'm just going to bring back in my other layer, and we're just going to get this working. And you can hear, obviously, it's just like a bit too slow. It's just sort of slowly changing the pitch over time. Makes it kind of sound like some sort of siren or something. It's a bit weird. So what we need to do is change the frequency of the LFO. And again, I'm going to make this a bit more extreme just so you can really hear what's going on. So we want something more like that. Now, again, it's going to sound weird until I turn this right down. So we're literally talking like tiny amounts. Even that's too much. But if you listen close, you can hear it going whoa, 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 and that's the variation in pitch. Okay, so that's fine. No problem there. Let's just play that with our lead. We're going to probably need to turn this down a bit. So something like that is sounding pretty decent. Let's just play that with the rest of the track. Again, this is all incredibly raw at the moment, so all of this stuff needs processing, it needs reverb and delay, so until that kind of gets added on, which we'll do in a couple of lessons time, it's always going to sound just a little bit sort of out of kilter with the rest of the track. So I think the sort of perfect setting is around about 8.04 Hertz for the speed of LFO3. Okay, that's fine. Changed my mind. Okay, so about 6.56 Hertz, I think, seems about the right sort of speed. We can always come back and tweak it. But that's fine. It's sounding good as it is. I'm happy with that. So it's got a bit more of an 80s vibe now. It's not completely there. Like I say, you got to wait until we sort of process this, but let's actually do a little bit of that now just to get this completely right. So let's go into the channel settings, and I want to remove some of the low end. Just to make sure that there's nothing that's going to conflict with our bass line when we put that in. I also want to do that to the first Retrolog lead as well, so let's go into that. Just select the channel. This should automatically update, and then I'm going to select 48 dB, and we'll set us up that same thing. So anything below 100 Hertz, that's going to interfere with the sub bass of the track, so we want to take that out. Now let's go back to our Retrolog layer 2, and let's just balance this a bit better. So I'm going to click or activate just band 1, which is automatically set to a low shelf EQ, and I'm just going to use it to change the balance a bit. So I want sort of more highs in the sound than I do lows, so we're just going to use it to remove some of the lows. Let's just play that. That's all because most of the sort of low frequencies are being supplied by this Retrolog layer 1. And I kind of want this layer, the second layer, to sort of sit on top of that. So that sounds about right. I'm liking it. Let's just also add a bit of saturation to this. So just in an empty insert slot, let's grab Quadrafuzz. Now Quadrafuzz is only available in Artist and Pro. So if you're using Cubase Elements, there is another plugin. It's a free one, which again, I will put a video in the extra videos folder showing you how to download and install it. And you can get to it by going to Other, and that is HYMBD Drive. I'll just very quickly show you that. It's kind of similar in a way. It's a 3-band sort of distortion or saturation unit. And the fact that it's free is really good. And plus it actually gives a really good sound. So very quickly with this. Literally is the setting that you'll want to use with that. It's very, very easy. Just gives that boost to the high end there. But I'm not going to use it. I'm just going to get rid of it. I'll use Quadrafuzz. And we're going to do a very similar thing. So in Quadrafuzz, you've got 4 bands, but that's fine. We'll just be working with the top sort of 3. And we're going to leave it on tape. So we're just adding tape saturation to the bands that we choose to. So without, and then with, it just really adds that sort of nice presence to the sound and just makes it, sort of brings it out more, which is very nice and desirable. So that's fine. Let's just play what we got. With that added processing, it's a little bit loud now, so I'm just going to turn it down a bit. Okay, so starting to sound really nice. As I mentioned, this will start sort of coming together. We're just coming up with the content for our track. Okay, so now I'm going to show those who are using the Tyrell N6 how to make a very, very similar sound to this with the pitch variation as well. So what I'm going to do is I'll just create an instrument track, Tyrell N6. Also, one handy little tip which I'd completely forgotten about, but you can right click anywhere sort of in the blank part of the display and you can change the actual zoom of the instrument, which makes everything just a little bit nicer on some screens. So for this we want to use just a single oscillator, and I'm just going to copy across the MIDI, of course. So, and we're going to, so I'm just turning down oscillator 2 because we only want one oscillator, and I'm going to double click to go into this, Control A to select all, and then move it up an octave by pressing Shift and pressing the up arrow. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a sort of modulation that's already set up within the Tyrell N6, which is using the vibrato dial, or slider I should say. So it won't do anything at the moment. We need to, vibrato is actually modulated by LFO1, so we should just need to turn down the depth mod. Let's just have a little listen. And then we control the speed of the pitch bend, so it's exactly the same effect as what we did in Retrolog, just sort of using a slightly different way of getting to it. I'm thinking where it is at its sort of stock setting, 12 o'clock is absolutely fine, so that's cool. And then we just sort of dial in the amount either by using this dial here or this dial here, it doesn't really matter. So don't want it too overpowering, let's just put that in with the rest of the mix. Let's just quickly compare it to our Retrolog layer. So it's a lot thinner. So let's just change the oscillator settings. Remember, this is oscillator 1 and we're only using oscillator 1, so we only want to affect this dial. We don't need to change this one, that's oscillator 2. Can't really get exactly the same sort of sound. There's a kind of inherent more noise on this Tyrell N6 than on Retrolog. That's fine though, it's got a very similar sort of sound. It's the sort of pitch wobbliness or the pitch modulation that we really want anyway. So let's just go into the channel settings and we're going to remove some of the low end as per usual. This will help make it a bit thinner as well, and we'll activate band 1 and use the low shelf just like we've done on the Retrolog lead as well, very similar. Let's just compare. If we really wanted to, we could start sort of removing some of the higher frequencies. Probably better to use a high cut here just to take out that noise. But we're about as close as I think I can get with that. I don't think we can get too much closer really, but that's absolutely fine. It's still a nice sound. It doesn't have to be exactly what we made in Retrolog. This is kind of the point that you need to understand. We're never going to be able to recreate it 100% perfectly, and that's absolutely not necessary anyway. As long as it sounds good and it works on its own, then it doesn't really matter. And we could, of course, always pitch this up. I'm not sure if it needs to go up anymore, but let's just try it. So I'm just going in and moving it up an octave again. Actually, it does sound better, so maybe that was just what it needed, just to go up an octave. Still hear that vibrato, very nice. actually sounds pretty good. I like it. I'm not sure. In fact, I think I even prefer the Tyrell N6 one slightly. Alright, so that's it for the free lessons of this course. I hope that was helpful to you. Please do like and subscribe to the video, and if you want to complete the rest of the track and make this awesome tune, then definitely follow the link in the description and check out the full course, as there's so much more to this track and so much more to learn about making a sort of chart or pop dance track that's going to help you massively in your own productions. Thank you very much for watching, guys and girls. See you in the next one.